Alright, so here we go for the finale of the Bad Teachers series. This is the last story and also covers exactly why I didn't make it through college the first time. It also covers why I refuse to go back to that same college and why I have an utter disdain for a specific educator there. Finally, it's going to the biggest pet peeve I have with specific art teachers. First though, the art. We're starting off getting into the art for February's Mail Club. The theme this month is cafe, so for the stickers we have 3 of the modern characters from Trace dressed like they're working at a cafe. I love Dear Hawthorne, and he's cute and adorable as heck, but if anyone would have a clumsy moment when trying to serve coffee or tea, it would be him. Poor darling is having a bad trip, and I hope he'll be okay. You can get this cute sticker design as well as the 2 others on my Patreon this month. Real quick, the print portion of the Mail Club, I am going to be stopping that one for now just because I think with doing stickers and a print, that's biting off more than I can chew, especially because there is a chance that I could be picked off the wait list for a local convention here that happens in a few months, and I need to be able to put time to designing merch. And I also want to eventually open up an online store, so at least until I can get those things going, I'm going to have to put the print portion on hold for now. Now that said, I will still have the stickers. It'll still be 2 to 3 stickers every month with the sticker club. And thank you guys so much for taking a moment to listen to this. And now let's get back to the topic. Alright, so I was an art student at a university that is in driving distance. I went into college right out of high school, mostly because I was afraid that if I took a year to not go, that I wouldn't go back. Fair assumption on my part because I was so burnt out on school by that time, by the time I graduated high school. I know that's nothing unusual, a ton of people feel that way and are so done with school by then, and I really was. I do think that burnout contributed to my dropping out when I eventually did, but I ultimately still blame it on 2 teachers. Well, 2 teachers of my horrendous mental health, but we are not doing a Nova's mental health problems unboxing today, so we're going to focus on the teachers because that's the outside factor at play. Now, that said, real quick, I do want to say that if you enjoy learning and you do well in a school setting, I don't discourage people from going to college. The only thing stopping me from going back, because although I got accepted to an art school, is that it's currently just far too expensive. Even with financial aid, it's outside of the realm of possibility for me for right now. As absolutely infuriating, as frustrating as that is. But I don't discourage people from going to school if that is the best way you learn. Some people learn better on their own. I enjoyed classes. I enjoyed school when I was going to my college. I enjoyed it a lot. I absolutely loved the classes that were good. And it wasn't an issue. But I do think that it is something to consider if you enjoy a school setting and structure and all that. I think it's a positive. If not, you can learn. If you're an art person, you can learn on your own. There are plenty of people who never did school and are still doing art for a living. And I just wanted to say that real quick before I get into this. And there are always, no matter the school, there will be bad teachers. I do want to say that because I know I've made it sound like teachers are horrible in some of my stories, but that's not the case. Now, back to the topic. The lesser story is coming first, as is pretty standard for whenever I do these by now. So, if you didn't know, like if you didn't decide to go to school, which, again, no judgment, or you just haven't gone yet, at plenty of standard universities, like not trade schools, but like standard universities, you don't usually just jump into the deep end of your major. You have classes usually called general studies or foundation classes that you have to take for base credits. Math, literature, history, science, social sciences, depending on the school. And if you aren't an art student, probably a few art category classes. This is pretty standard, and even if you are an art student, unfortunately art history rarely, if ever, counts as your history courses. That tangent did have a point, because the first teacher we're talking about was, I believe, a world studies teacher, or something like that. The course counted under the history credits, if I remember right, and this was quite some time ago, so some details will be missing. And when I say this was quite some time ago, I'm talking, I think, around 10 years at this point. It's been like a decade. So I had this class in the morning in, I believe, my second year, up on main campus. It was like a 45-minute drive away. Already a bad time for me because I was not a fan of mornings, but I couldn't get this course in the afternoon, and the history teacher at the closer campus was nice, but a little intense. So I was intimidated. Now, my sister, whenever Andy took courses from him, she absolutely loved him. But she shares that passion for history. So she enjoyed the intensity. Intense teachers make me nervous. So I went for the on-campus course. Now, my fiance and I would ride up to campus together. She'd go to her earliest class, and I would hang out in the library until the history class. Because I think her earliest class was at, she had to be up there by 8. That was when her class started. Mine wasn't until 10. So she'd go to her class, and I would hang out in the library and draw. So something about this teacher, when I first walked in, set off red flags. I can't tell you what, because it wasn't a specific. I just remember that I immediately disliked her, and I wasn't the only one either. We had a couple of foreign students, not certain from where, but definitely European and with heavy accents. That does matter later. And I could hear them talking about not liking her already. Now, she hadn't even said anything other than hello as we walked in, but nobody liked her. So, as was the norm for me, I tried to ignore it and keep my head down. Conflict with a teacher was not what I was looking for, especially not in college. I didn't want it in, elementary, middle, or high school, and I definitely didn't want it in college. Now, that said, unfortunately, it was not long before this teacher proved our concern to be pretty valid. Now, when class started, she had us introduce ourselves and then went over the syllabus. Pretty standard. It's not uncommon if you haven't been to college that at the beginning of a course, usually a lot of times, actually I don't think I've had teachers that haven't done this, but they'll essentially have you go around the room, introduce yourself, tell a weird fact about yourself, like an icebreaker, and usually give your major and what you're going to be focusing on. So that started out pretty standard. Well, immediately after that, she started quizzing us on recent events. Now, I am not above admitting that knowing what's going on in the world is important. Even more so regarding events more localized to you. However, this course was not a modern history course. She was quizzing us on obscure recent events from other countries, and when we didn't know about it, she got angry and spent the entire remainder of class scolding and lecturing us for not reading the newspaper or focusing on articles about these events, not just major ones. And it would be one thing if this only happened once. But this was not a one-time occurrence. Not at all. She'd start every class out quizzing us on this stuff and then talk down to us about it. It wasn't for a grade. She took time away from teaching us the things that we actually were supposed to be learning in her class, and then actively talking down to us, saying that we must waste too much time playing games and on the computer. Not like most of us had jobs, lives, and other classes that we were also worrying about. She also, despite having a prominent accent herself and English not being her first language, had no patience or kindness for the foreign students who needed her to speak more slowly or sometimes fumbled over their words because English was not their first language either. She was rude about it, and these students were really trying. And even as a native English speaker, it upset me. And it made me mad. And on top of it all, if she asked us something, even if it was something she was supposed to be teaching us, and we didn't already know it, she would tell us, well, if you don't know that I'm not telling you, you need to learn to pay attention to things and inform yourselves, so you'll need to look it up. And it wasn't that she'd gone over it and nobody had listened. She just wouldn't tell us if we didn't already know. Like, lady, this is literally part of the course, and you are a hecking teacher. Telling us about things we don't know is literally your job. Also, I have an art project due. I don't have time to do your job of teaching me for you. This went on to the point where I started skipping class. I'll be honest. Instead of going to class, I would just stay in the library and draw. Because, like, my fiance had another class. She didn't know I didn't go to class. So I just sit in the library and draw instead. Or be on Tumblr, because at the time I was on Tumblr. And then eventually, I would try and go again. And the same nonsense would happen. So I'd skip again next time. And it eventually hit a point where I stopped going at all. Now, because of that, I apparently missed a big occurrence. I didn't learn this until later, but this teacher eventually got, let go. What happened was that she received so many complaints that administration had someone sit in on her class. I think there were only a few instances of being sat in on before she got let go. Now, what was funny was I was extremely surprised when I got my grades. I stopped attending before midterms. I passed that class. From what I understand, everyone who took that class with me got a passing grade. I never heard anything else about that teacher. Now, that said, I do think that the reason that everyone who took that class got a passing grade was because obviously in college you pay by semester. And then essentially there was a big fuss and issue was made over that, you know, if we failed, it would have been that we paid for a class that, you know, we actively paid for a class where we did not get the teaching we were supposed to get from it. And that was why administration, after doing sitting in on the class, decided to just pass everybody. Because, you know, that's not right, and there was a big issue made over it. Over potentially, you know, being made to pay for a class and then having to take it again just because the teacher was crap. And not because of anything on the student's part, you know, for the ones other than me who didn't just skip class. Not complaining that I got a passing grade, it's just I find it very interesting. And again, I never heard anything else about that teacher after that. But that brings us here. The finale. The last one. The teacher that is why I left my first university and will never go back there specifically for an art degree. Alright, so let's rip the band-aid off. I failed design too. Twice. Initially, the assumption is that that would be my fault, right? And if this had gone any other way, I would agree with you. I am completely aware that I run the risk of sounding like an entitled, spoiled art kid, upset because they didn't see my talent. But that is not what happened. No. What happened was that I had one of those art teachers who was entirely of the mind that if I don't like it, it's wrong. Now keep in mind, design is a technical course. If I am applying the design principles and concepts that we are learning and using them correctly, then it isn't wrong just because you didn't like the end result. Because art is subjective anyway. Yeah, even if this was a class that was less technically focused, art is subjective. It's funny how it works that way, and you as an actual artist, because he did art, should have known this. I struggled so much with this teacher. I barely passed Design 1 for the same reason. And I know you're thinking, why didn't you just take it under a different instructor? I couldn't. It was required for my major, for one thing. Obviously, as an art student, design and design 2, you know, principles of design and all that, those are going to be required for your course. For, I think, any art major, graphic design, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's going to be required. And that wouldn't be a problem. I actually enjoyed learning different principles of design. But he was the only instructor for that course. Didn't matter if you took it in spring or fall or summer, he was the only instructor. So that was infuriating. And I tried. Guys, like, I tried so hard to pass this class. Both times, I tried and tried and tried. And I failed. I failed so badly because this teacher didn't like my projects or my concepts. And his preferences were so all over the board with everybody else's that I couldn't figure out, like, what I needed to do specifically to appeal to his likes. Especially since, because it was focused on design, everything was a lot more abstract. They didn't want us to do anything like conceptual or impressionistic. They wanted us to just do abstract, which made it that much more frustrating, because abstract art is so all over the place anyway. But it was so frustrating. And my mental health at that point was already in the tubes at that time. And then failing an art class. Failing an art class twice. Failing at the thing that I felt defined me. Tore it to shreds. So I dropped out of school. I stopped going and I dropped out the following semester. There is a little bit more to that. The following semester I was supposed to be, I actually had been going on campus, which in retrospect, I'm kind of glad I didn't do, because that would have separated me from my now fiance, and I would have been so lonely and lost without her. But the fact that she wasn't going was not why I didn't go. I didn't go because when I got my schedule, they had screwed up my schedule so bad. Like, I didn't get into even half of the classes that I was supposed to be in. And they didn't let me know so that I could pick other classes. They didn't let me know. They didn't notify me. I just didn't get into almost any of them. The science class that I was in, they didn't put me in the lab that went with the lecture. They put me in a lab for a completely different science class. I don't know how they messed it up this badly. And it was just awful. And I was just like, nope, because it was too late. And the science classes, they filled up very fast because we had like a lot of biology majors and different science majors at this college. So they filled up really fast. And there was no more room in the lab for the lecture I was supposed to be in, and there was no more room in the lecture for the lab that I was supposed to be in. And so it was just, I just quit. It was too much. And I ended up just not going back. So here I am now wanting to go back to school. And I will say, even though it wasn't for animation, I did look at going back to that school. And I will not be returning to that school, because that hecking teacher is now the head of the whole ding-dang art department, and he's still the only design teacher. So I will not be returning there. And once I can figure out how to afford it, I've been accepted at a more specialized school. So ha-ha there, Mr. Art Teacher. I will not be dealing with your personal person who did not like my stuff and failed me because he did not like my stuff, because I was applying the concepts, because he even told me I was applying the concepts. He just gave it low grades because he didn't like it. And that just, can you tell that I'm angry? I get a little passionate about this, I will admit. So, anyway, there you guys go. That wraps up the awful teacher saga. And I hope I won't have any others in the future. But I do want to thank you guys for watching, and I know I've asked before, but have you guys had any awful teachers? Or any just awful school experiences in general? Because I could go into a whole other thing about that, just awful school experiences in general. Like, oh my goodness. But if you do, I definitely want to hear about them, because I love reading you guys' comments and your stories. Even if I can't think of much to say back, I love reading everyone's comments. They make me happy. But a big thank you to my patrons, Inside Chaos, Salmon, and Creativa Artly. And again, my brain keeps trying to mess that up. Horribly. But anyway, I appreciate you guys a ton and your support, and I definitely appreciate everyone watching this video. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!